He smiled at me, as though apologizing for being so earnest. Yet he had no need to be apologetic, for I was drinking in his words. I had dreamed of becoming a soldier because of a warrior's high status, and because it had always seemed to me that it was better to carry a spear than a rake. But I had never thought beyond those selfish ambitions. Arthur had thought far beyond, and he brought to Dumnonia a clear vision of where his sword and spear must take him. "We have a chance." Arthur leaned on the high rampart as he spoke. "To make a Dumnonia in which we can serve our people. We can't give them happiness, and I don't know how to guarantee a good harvest that will make them rich. But I do know that we can make them safe, and a safe man, a man who knows that his children will grow without being taken for slaves, and his daughter's bride price won't be ruined by a soldier's rape, is a man more likely to be happy than a man living under the threat of war. Is that fair?" "Yes, Lord," I said. He rubbed his gloved hands against the cold. My hands were wrapped in rags that made holding my spear difficult, especially as I was also trying to keep them warm beneath my cloak. Behind us, in the feasting hall, a great roar of men's laughter gusted. The food had been as bad as any at a winter feast, but there had been plenty of mead and wine, though Arthur was as sober as I was myself. I looked at his profile as he gazed west towards the building clouds. The moon shadowed his lantern jaw and made his face seem bonnier than ever. "I hate war," Arthur said suddenly. "You do?" I sounded surprised, but then I was young enough to enjoy war. "Of course." He smiled at me. "I happen to be good at it. Maybe you are too. And that just means we have to use it wisely. Do you know what happened in Gwent last autumn?" "You wounded Gorfythyd," I said eagerly. "You took his arm." "So I did," he said, almost in a tone of surprise. "My horses aren't much use in hilly country, and no use at all in wooded land. So I took them north into Powys's flat farmlands. Gorfythyd was trying to knock down Tudric's walls, so I started burning Gorfythyd's haystacks and grain stores. We burned, we killed. We did it well, not because we wanted to, but because it needed to be done. And it worked. It brought Gorfythyd back from Tudric's walls to the flat farmland, where my horses could break him. And they did. We attacked him at dawn, and he fought well, but he lost the battle along with his left arm, and that, Derval, was the end of the killing. It had served its purpose. Do you understand? The purpose of the killing was to persuade Powys that it would be better for them to be at peace with Dumnonia than war. And now there will be peace." "There will?" I asked dubiously. Most of us believed the spring thaw could bring only a fresh attack from Powys's embittered king Gorfythyd. "Gorfythyd's son is a sensible man," Arthur said. "His name is Kyneglas, and he wants peace. And we must give Prince Kyneglas time to persuade his father that he'll lose more than one arm if he goes to war with us again. And once Gorfythyd is persuaded that peace is better than war, he'll call a council, and we'll all go and make a lot of noise, and at the end of it, Derval, I shall marry Gorfythyd's daughter, Ceinwen." He gave me a swift and somehow embarrassed look. "Seren, they call her. The Star. The Star of Powys. They say she's very beautiful." He was pleased by that prospect, and his pleasure somehow surprised me. But back then I had still not recognized the vanity in Arthur. "Let's hope she is as beautiful as a star," he went on. "But beautiful or not, I'll marry her, and we'll pacify Siluria. And then the Saxons will face a united Britain. Powys, Gwent, Dumnonia, and Siluria, all embracing each other, all fighting the same enemy, and all at peace with one another." I laughed, not at him, but with him, for his ambitious prophecy had been so matter-of-fact. "How do you know?" I asked. "Because Keenaglass has offered the peace terms, of course. And you're not to tell that to anyone, Derval. Otherwise it might not happen. Even his father doesn't know yet. So this is a secret between you and me." "Yes, Lord," I said, and I felt hugely privileged to be told such an important secret. But of course that was just how Arthur wanted me to feel. He always knew how to manipulate men, and he especially knew how to manipulate young, idealistic men. "But what use is peace?" Arthur asked me, "if we're fighting amongst ourselves?" "Our task is to give Mordred a rich, peaceful kingdom, and to do that we have to make it a good and just kingdom." He was looking at me now, and speaking very earnestly in his deep, soft voice. "We cannot have peace if we break our treaties, and the treaty that let the men of Kurnow mine our tin was a good one. I've no doubt they were cheating us. All men cheat when it comes to giving their money to kings. But was that reason to kill them and their children, and their children's kittens? So next spring, Derval, unless we finish this nonsense now, we shall have war instead of peace. King Mark will attack. He won't win, but his pride will ensure that his men kill a lot of our farmers, and we shall have to send a war band into Kurnow. And that's a bad country to fight in. Very bad. But we'll win in the end. Pride will be settled. But at what price? 300 dead farmers? How many dead cattle? And if Gorfithid sees that we're fighting a war on our western frontier, he'll be tempted to take advantage of our weakness by attacking in the north. We can make peace, Derval, but only if we're strong enough to make war. If we look weak, then our enemies will swoop like hawks. And how many Saxons will we face next year? Can we really spare men to cross the Tamar to kill a few farmers in Kurnow?" "Lord," I began, and was about to confess the truth, but Arthur hushed me. The warriors in the hall were chanting the war song of Beli Mar, beating the earth floor with their feet as they proclaimed the great slaughter and doubtless anticipated more slaughter in Kurnow. "You mustn't say a word about what happened on the moor," Arthur warned me. "Oaths are sacred, even to those of us who wonder if any god cares enough to enforce them. Let us just assume, Derval, that Tristan's little girl was telling the truth. What does that mean?" I gazed into the frosted night. "War with Kurnow," I said bleakly. "No," Arthur said. "It means that tomorrow morning, when Tristan returns, someone has to challenge for the truth. The gods, people tell me, always favor the honest in such encounters." I knew what he was saying, and I shook my head. "Tristan won't challenge Owain," I said. "Not if he has as much sense as he seems to have," Arthur agreed. "Even the gods would find it hard to make Tristan beat down Owain's sword. So, if we want peace, and if we want all those good things that follow peace, someone else must be Tristan's champion. Isn't that right?" I looked at him, horrified at what I thought he was saying. "You?" I finally asked. He shrugged under his white cloak. "I'm not sure who else will do it," he said gently. "But there is one thing you can do for me." "Anything, Lord," I said. "Anything." And at that moment I think I would even have agreed to fight Owain for him. "A man going into battle, Derval," Arthur said carefully, "should know that his cause is right. Perhaps the Black-Shield Irish did carry their shields across the land unseen by anyone. Or maybe their druids did make them fly. Or maybe, tomorrow the gods, if they take an interest, will think I fight for a good cause. What do you think?" He asked the question as innocently as if he was merely inquiring about the weather. I stared at him, overwhelmed by him, and desperately wanting him to avoid this challenge against the best swordsman in Dumnonia. "Well?" he prompted me. "The gods—" I began, but then had difficulty speaking, for Owain had been good to me. The champion was not an honest man, but I could count on my fingers how many honest men I had met. Yet despite his roguery, I liked him. Yet I liked this honest man much more. I also paused to determine whether or not my words broke an oath, then decided they did not. "The gods will support you, Lord," I said at last. He smiled sadly. "Thank you, Derval." "But why?" I blurted out. He sighed and looked back to the moon-glossed land. "When Uther died," he said after a long time, "the land fell into chaos. That happens to a land without a king, and we are without a king now. We have Mordred, but he is a child, so someone has to hold the power until he is of age. One man must hold the power, Derval, not 3 or 4 or 10, just one. I wish it were not so. With all my heart, believe me, I would rather leave things as they are. I would rather grow old with Owain as my dear friend. But it cannot be. The power must be held for Mordred, and it must be held properly and justly, and given to him intact. And that means we cannot afford perpetual squabbles between men who want the king's power for themselves. One man has to be a king who is no king, and that one man must relinquish the powers of the kingdom when Mordred is of age. And that's what soldiers do, remember? They fight the battles for people who are too weak to fight for themselves. They also—" he smiled— "take what they want. And tomorrow I want something of Owain. I want his honor, so I shall take it." He shrugged. "Tomorrow I fight for Mordred, and for that child. And you, Derval," he poked me hard in the chest, "will find her a kitten." He stamped his feet against the cold, then peered westward. "You think those clouds will bring rain or snow in the morning?" he asked. "I don't know, Lord." "Let us hope so. Now, I hear you had a conversation with that poor Saxon they killed to learn the future. So tell me all he told you. The more we know of our enemies, the better." He walked me back to my post, listened to what I had to say about Cerdic, the new Saxon leader on the south coast, then went to his bed. He seemed untroubled by what must happen in the morning, but I was terrified for him. I remembered Owain beating back the combined attack of both Tudric's champions, and I tried to say a prayer to the stars, which are the homes of the gods, but I could not see them because my eyes were watering. The night was long and bitterly cold, but I wished the dawn would never come. Arthur's wish was granted, for at dawn it began to rain. It soon became a hard, pelting storm of winter rain that swept in grey veils across the long, wide valley between Caer Cadern and Innis Widrin. The ditches overflowed, water poured off the ramparts and puddled under the great hall's eaves. Smoke leaked from the holes in damp, thatched roofs, and sentries hunched their shoulders beneath their soaking cloaks. Tristan, who had spent the night in a small village just east of Caer Cadern, struggled up the fort's muddy approach path. His 6 guards and the orphaned child accompanied him, all of them slipping in the steep mud whenever they could not find a foothold on the tufts of grass growing at the path's sides.